Hey, welcome back to Business 150, Introduction to Management. We are now in video number 5 in this module on ethics and social responsibility. And as you can tell from this title slide, in this video we are looking at the topic of social responsibility, also known as corporate social responsibility, because of course we're talking about organizations and businesses. At the end of this video, we hope that you will be able to define social responsibility and discuss its relevance to management, as well as identify contemporary areas of corporate social responsibility focus. We want you to be able to accomplish both those things as you review this video, as well as the accompanying sections in the textbook. Now, when we talk about social responsibility, what really are we talking about? You can see here. Social responsibility is the obligation that an organization assumes to maximize its positive impact and minimize its negative impact on society. To maximize the positive and minimize the negative. Now, that's a great overarching principle. The question, of course, is in what ways does that really shake itself out practically when you are managing an organization? Because quite frankly, when you're hired on or promoted to a role of management and oversight in an organization, your primary role is to accomplish organizational goals, right? The goals that, well, your boss and your firm give you to accomplish. That's your main role. How does that dovetail or intersect or perhaps contradict with this assumption to maximize positive impact and minimize negative impact on society? Well, perhaps the easiest way to understand social responsibility, this concept, is to think about kids playing well together in a sandbox. Now, we're all told as children to play fair, to share your toys with others, to get along with other kids, to be kind, and all those kinds of things. And on a practical basis, this really comes out once your children are able to make actual choices of their own, like about the age of these children here in this little photograph, right? Now, the reason I use this idea, this concept of playing well with others in the sandbox is, quite frankly, this is one of the durable illustrations that I remember when my kids were little. As you may remember, I have 2 sons. They're now in their 30s, but a long time ago, they were little kids. And at the time, we lived in a relatively new subdivision in Fairfield, and we would take them to play in the new park that was in the neighborhood. It was a relatively new subdivision. The developer built this nice park, and so we'd take the kids when they were about this age as the kids in this photo to play in the sandbox with other kids that were there. And of course, like I said, you try to teach your kids to play well with others in the same sandbox. And lo and behold, every once in a while, we'd be there, the kids would be playing, sharing their toys, and then this other little kid from the neighborhood would show up. It was the same kid. This kid really didn't like playing well with others, and so he would oftentimes be awkward or inappropriate, many times take himself off by a little lonesome to the far corner of the sandbox. And occasionally, this little kid would end up dropping trow and peeing in the sandbox when there's other kids in there. Yeah, that's right. That's something you don't forget. I remember thinking, first couple times this happened, it's like, where is this kid's parents? And do they know this kid's doing this? Hey, somebody get this kid out of the sandbox. You can't do that. You can't pee in the sandbox where kids are playing. And this is exactly the illustration that I'm trying to convey to you with regards to organizations, corporations, and firms in society. Here in the United States, we legally accrue citizenship status to our corporations. They're seen as individual, unique legal entities, and therefore, they have the responsibility to play well in society, to play well with others in the sandbox. We've given them the privilege to exist as unique individuals in our society. They have to play well with others in the sandbox. And quite frankly, I also give that illustration because whenever we talk about CSR, you're never going to forget this example I'm giving you, right? Okay, so you got to play well as a citizen in society. Now, The textbook will share with you there are at least 4 progressive stages of social responsibility. You see them here. The first thing that a firm needs to be able to do is, of course, be financially viable. They have to be able to support themselves. We really don't look at firms or corporations or private sector firms as being targets of charity from the government on a regular basis. We don't give them welfare. They're supposed to be able to support themselves and be individually financially viable. Stage 2 of social responsibility is they need to be able to comply with the legal and regulatory requirements that the government and local and state jurisdictions place upon them. They need to be legal. Step 3, stage 3, they need to exercise sound ethics, principles, and values in the marketplace and the society in which they dwell. And we've talked a little bit about how ethics, principles, and values are affected not only by individual upbringing and individual choices, but also with the aggregate consensus of what society deems to be acceptable and unacceptable. All of that is wrapped up in stage 3. And finally, stage 4, this whole concept of corporate citizenship. What does it mean to be an organization that fulfills the other 3 stages, but also maintains status as a contributing citizen in society? Those are the 4 broad stages of what we would describe progressive corporate social responsibility. Now, what are some practical advantages to the firm if the firm pursues an active policy and behavior of being socially responsible? You see 4 of these advantages listed on this slide. A firm that has made a decision to commit to socially responsible behavior eventually many times will win the trust and respect of their employees and their customers and society at large, and therefore that accrues to them a better reputation. You think of them first, and therefore these businesses tend to increase profits in the long run. Now, not always. You realize that public reputation in society is not the only thing that's going to contribute to whether or not a company makes profits or not. We're talking about that this entire semester, right? There's lots of elements that come into play. But nevertheless, its public reputation in the society in which it dwells is a very big part of its reputation. Now, we do want to let you know there are very strong arguments for social responsibility, and there are also arguments against social responsibility, and we'll cover those in the next lecture deck, the next video. But you should know right up front, there are people who logically and rationally argue against firms making social responsibility a priority in their existence and behavior. We may not particularly agree with that position, but you should know what the arguments are. And like I said, we'll talk about that in the next lecture. For now, you should see this 4th bullet point. The greater societal demand for socially responsible businesses has led many firms to view CSR as a means to gain competitive advantage in the marketplace. What does competitive advantage really mean? It means something that you do better than anybody else in the business. You're better at it than your competitors. And if you think about this concept, right, as applied to CSR, it means that because consumers, society, the general public, more so and more so, is leaning on business, and the expectations have grown for business to act as socially responsible citizens in our society, many firms now see CSR as a means to gain a notoriety and a reputation, a good reputation, and therefore to gain an advantage over competition. The fact that they are known as perhaps one of the few competitors in that particular marketplace that exercises corporate social responsibility and oversight. That can be, in and of itself, a form of competitive advantage over the reputation of your rivals and competitors. Therefore, some of the issues that corporations and organizations face, that organizations have to be responsible, well, first of all, to their owners and investors, because they expect the organization to earn a profit or a return on their invested capital. And as I've mentioned from the very first lecture, right, the whole nature of business is you can seek to do great things in the world, but if you don't keep the lights on, then you don't accomplish anything great in the world because your company goes bankrupt. Right? So the first thing is, yes, a company needs to keep the lights on, needs to continue to earn a profit or a return on invested capital just to stay in business. And you see the second bullet point there, in relation to its employees, businesses are expected to provide several things: a safe workplace, adequate pay to its employees, fair treatment to its employees. And of course, fair treatment was the whole topic of that previous video lecture on organizational justice, right? And to provide equal opportunities without bias to its employees as well. Now, in conjunction with that, with the responsibilities that the organization has to its employees, more so and more so, corporate social responsibility intersects with consumerism. And you can see here the definition. Consumerism refers to activities undertaken by individuals, groups, organizations to protect four basic consumer rights: the right to safety in the consumption of a product or service, the right to be informed about both the good and the not so good about a particular product or service, the right to make a free choice without coercion, and, more so and more so, the right for consumers to be heard in the marketplace, for the market to hear their feedback, their complaints, their objections, their suggestions, all of those things, the voice of the consumer. And of course, nowadays, with the advent of social media and various different ways for consumers' voices to be heard, that's become a more and more powerful force in the marketplace, feedback from the consumer. There was a time, a generation ago, when the individual consumer really had no platform to state their objections or concerns or worries or bad experiences with a product. And that's, of course, no longer the case. And so more so and more so when we talk about corporate social responsibility, what we're really talking about is the advent of active consumerism shaping the way that firms now must choose to operate in society. So, with this brief video, we hope that you've been able to get a working definition of social responsibility and to discuss its relevance to management and to identify contemporary areas of current CSR focus. I hope this makes sense for you. We've taken this as sort of a broad overview of how the modern organization must look at CSR, and I hope that it's gotten your thoughts moving already to consider, what does that mean for me in my career? What does that mean for me in my managerial choices? And what does that mean for my influence in the larger firm or organization to which I will be a contributor? All of these things become part of the discussion about corporate social responsibility and us as individual managers and decision makers. I hope that's helpful. More on this, of course, in the textbook, and we'll see you in the next lecture.